Hey everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this analysis. If you didn't know, I've already got a review of the show on my channel. You can click on the little button that's just appeared or go down to the description down below. This isn't a review. If you want my honest opinions about the show from a technical point of view, from a production quality point of view, you can check out that video. This is more of my hot take and my thought out feelings about the identity politics on display in the show. I'll say this. I did enjoy the 2 episodes that have been released. I watched them. I started watching them at 2 in the morning, and it's now 4:30. And I did enjoy the series for what it was. I've always been a massive fan of Lord of the Rings. As I said in my review, I've watched all of the movies. I remember the first time I watched the movies back on VHS tape with my mom. I've watched pretty much every adaptation I can find for the Lord of the Rings, including the Soviet Russian version. You can check out that video on my channel. I've watched the Ralph Bakshi version. I've watched the Rankin Bass versions. So I'm a massive fan of the Lord of the Rings. I've watched every adaptation, both good and bad, and this adaptation has been by far the most divisive among fans for the simple fact that the show is, pushing identity politics. So I just want to give my thoughts and feelings about this because I know it's a hot button topic right now, especially among fans of Tolkien's work. So what I've done is I've taken down notes on my phone here, and these are thoughts I've been having for the last few weeks before the show, and then they were kind of hammered home while I was watching the show. I recently made a video talking about my opinions on, the Sandman. And the first thing that came up was a bunch of people saying, Caleb, you're just a white guy from South Africa. And so I feel like I need to also give a little bit of context about who I am so that you understand where I'm coming from. I am most definitely not racist. And every time someone says that, people kind of use that as proof that they are racist, which has never made sense to me. I'm not Tolkienizing my friends here, but a lot of my closest friends are black or African, whichever the correct term is overseas. Here in South Africa, we just call each other white and black. I went to a government school. When I was playing sports, I played every sport imaginable, but when I was playing soccer, I was the only white guy on my team. When I was playing touch rugby, I was the only white guy on my team. They were speaking Zulu the whole time. That's a language I really struggle with, but I never once felt like an outsider. I understood, cool. The truth of the matter is I'm a minority in this country. And so I was never in a situation where I felt upset or angry. That's just how life was. Lots of my closest friends are also Indians. I've got lots of Asian friends. So I'm not saying this from a white superiority point of view. I'm not saying this from a racist point of view. I just have to put it out there. If you're going to try to say I'm a white guy who misses apartheid, you're just wrong. And it's stupid that I have to bring this up as a point. So that's my background. I didn't want to have to bring it up, but after everything that came out after the Sandman review, I feel like it's necessary to actually just try to paint an accurate picture on what my thoughts and feelings on race are. Not a racist. The truth of the matter is, I feel like when it comes to shows like this, where the original work of fiction portrayed the characters as predominantly white, when you decide to recast those characters into a more diverse cast, you're doing nothing but tokenizing the actors. You are taking them and ultimately belittling them, because what you're saying is we are casting these characters for the only reason other than we believe race is important, not because these actors have got great talent. Ultimately, what you're saying is when you're changing a character's race, what you're saying is there is nothing more important about an individual than their race, which is something that frustrates me a little bit, because we are not just our race. We're also our cultures, we're our values, we're our faiths, we're our relationships, our actions. The things that we do give us our identity. So ultimately, if you were to take me, and I use this example in my Sandman video, if you take me, who's a white South African, and another one of my best friends who also happens to be a white South African of roughly the same age, on paper, we're supposed to be the same character because we fit the same demographic, when in reality, we're completely different people. And that's what gets missed when you bring in this idea of a specific character's race becomes their identity. And that's a massive issue I have with the Rings of Power. We have all of these characters coming in, and they break the pre-established law that Tolkien wrote. Now, I'll bring that up later, simply because we want to be more diverse. Art and its artists require integrity. That is something that I've always held very, very close to my heart. If you are going to break that integrity for the sake of trying to create modern politics in a fictitious world, you're completely missing the point. A lot of these characters were cast to battle this idea of racism. The story of the Lord of the Rings, the story of the Rings of Power, just the story of Middle-earth in general is so much bigger and so much more important than this idea that we're limited by our race. The reason I say this is because we're talking about a dark lord who's going to take over the world. That is a massive, impressive, scary story. And what's crazy as well is the theme of racism is brought up throughout Tolkien's work. This idea of superiority over another one's race is present in both the dwarves and the elves and the humans and the halflings and the hobbits. It's present there. You actually get rid of that nuance. You actually break that idea of, this is the idea we're presenting. You make it almost rudimentary. You make it elementary when you say, oh, we've got to shove this down the audience's face. Because we understand that the show and the books and the novelizations are addressing racism already with the characters of the elves and the dwarves. You treat your audience like they're unintelligent and they don't understand concepts when you have to shove an idea down their throat. So when you put yourselves in a situation where someone's race is a most important, quality, you're missing out on what that individual offers as a person, as an individual. They have so much more to offer than just their race. And that's what we miss when we tokenize people, when we boil them down to their most simplest elements, which is their race. Their skin tone suddenly becomes the most important thing about them, which is not the case. If you think someone's most important attribute is their skin tone, you are missing out on their entire experience. And that's just sad in my opinion. I have to be very careful with how I propose my thoughts and feelings in this episode, simply because I know people will get offended and people will get hurt, even if I'm not trying to be offensive. And it's never my intention to offend people. But sitting down watching the show, I couldn't help but feel that, sorry, those are my puppies. They're busy playing right now. But I couldn't help but feel that the most important element of the show was not to tell a great story or not to bring the fantastical works of Tolkien to life, but rather to push this agenda and to kind of like forcibly diversify people, because for whatever reason, people view the world of the Lord of the Rings as something that's not diverse enough. And their idea of changing this is to make an adaptation that doesn't honor the lore of the books, which becomes an issue for me because I'm someone that loves lore. I sit and I study lore, and like characters like Tom Bombadil, I've spent hours and hours, if not days, doing research on fan theories about the character of Tom Bombadil, because his personality, his actions, his everything like that is so much more important than just, oh, but what is his skin color? And that's what this whole show ended up feeling like was boiling down to. Every time a new character was introduced, they're like, oh, this character is going to show up. And you go, cool, okay, what skin color is this character going to be? And I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, Caleb, that makes you a racist because you're sitting there wanting to know if characters are going to be different races or different colors. And it's not because I was actively searching for it. It's just because the show is really trying to hammer that point home. And something that I noticed, and again, only 2 episodes have been released, so I could be proven wrong down the line. There's no white male character that is a healthy protagonist, except for maybe Elrond. But everyone else is a character of color. Everyone else is, a female, which again, I've got no problem with. And the truth of the matter is that most, if not all, Lord of the Rings fans won't have a problem with that. Because we have characters like Galadriel in the original source material. We have characters like Eowyn. I'm definitely not someone who sees a feminist character and automatically goes, they are pushing an agenda. But it becomes so visibly apparent in the show, especially when you can tell from a character's race and gender what role they're going to play. For the most part, if it's a person of color, you can assume they're going to be a protagonist. And if they are a white male character, chances are they're either going to be an antagonist or be more antagonistic, when we meet Galadriel's party and team, it's her with a bunch of white guys, and the white guys are just like, you know what, we're giving up, let's go, let's get out of here. And those, for the most part, are majority of the white male characters that we see. Again, I'm not saying you can't have evil white characters, and I'm not saying that it's bad to have, you know, characters of color portrayed as bad people. What I'm just trying to say is this idea of forced diversity starts to creep in once again. And that's what I spoke about in my Sandman video. Look, guys, at the end of the day, I understand that adaptations are never 100% accurate. Even if you watch the Peter Jackson films, which everyone claims are amazing, they're perfect adaptations, they're not. He changed so much. He completely skipped so many different things. Again, even Rolf Bakshi, you know, was worried about adapting Lord of the Rings because it was this massive, fantastical story that many felt could never be adapted into film. Things will change. I mean, a stupid example is literally Gandalf's eyebrows. It's told in the book that, you know, they extend past the rim of his hat. That's like physically impossible. And the way The Hobbit, actually from 1973, if I'm not mistaken, the way it worked around that was by giving him more of like a hood rather than a hat, so his eyebrows could extend past it. So no adaptations are 100%, but the idea behind the adaptation and the goal behind the adaptation is what's so incredibly important. There's this video I watched recently. I'm going to put it in the description below. It talks about the different approaches that Peter Jackson took in comparison to the Amazon team. I'm going to have them on screen so you guys can see. I might even play a part of it if I can download it in time and put it into my edits. So if it is in my edits, I'm going to play it now.
We didn't want to put any of our own, certainly in terms of the thematic material, we didn't want to put any of our own baggage. I mean, we had no interest in putting our messages into this movie, but we thought that we should honor Tolkien by putting his messages into it.
It felt only natural to us that an adaptation of the author's work would reflect what the world actually looks like.
But this is a great example of how Peter Jackson approached the film and trying to keep the honor and integrity of Tolkien's work intact in comparison to that of Amazon's team. Even if you look at Rolf Bakshi, who did the rotoscoped animated film, he said, and I spoke about this in my video, his goal was to keep Tolkien's work as the most important part, to keep it intact, to honor his work. That is the most important part of the directors who love the source material, is to honor Tolkien and the work that he created. Whereas Amazon is doing the exact opposite. They want to take Tolkien's work, not honor it, and adapt it to the world today, which belittles his work, which belittles the subtle undertones and the themes that he brings up. Because again, he battles racism in his work. The entire dichotomy and relationship between elves and dwarves is a look at racism. But that's not enough for, you know, people in Hollywood nowadays who want to shove this agenda down our throats where everything is about identity politics. Because the truth of the matter is life isn't identity politics. People's race, yes, it impacts their life. That's undeniable. We've seen that in history time and time again. And again, even here in South Africa, I gave you guys my backstory, but I can see it play out in people's lives. The realities of apartheid are not lost on me. I was born after it, but I see the ramifications of that today. People's races and how people treat each other because of their race matters. But when you sum up a character to nothing more than their race, you've done something wrong, because we as people are so much more than our races. We are so much more than the color of our skin. We are our actions, we're our values, we're our relationships with other people. And that's what this show actually gets fundamentally wrong. So yeah, guys, this was a bit of a ramble. I had my points on my phone, but I don't think I necessarily addressed them as well as I was hoping I would. Again, I'm tired. It is now 5 in the morning. I've been awake all night to watch The Rings of Power. But I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and feelings on this. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching this review. If you enjoyed it, please give this a thumbs up. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't yet. It would mean the world to me, and I hope to see you guys again in another review.